if this actually goes live. And look at there. It did go live.
Will you looky there?
I know, with all the stuff that happened today, we're live from Houston, Texas. At least me. I'm in Houston, Texas. My guest is not. Welcome everyone to today's episode of What Makes You Tick. My 20th episode. 20.
Congratulations. That is a thing.
Look, I'm really excited that you guys are here. Before we dive in, we need to do some housekeeping notes and to help everybody have a great experience today. I have an amazing guest, and I'm excited that you get a chance to connect with this gentleman. Before we get started, just like I said, a few notes on the conversation before we start our conversation. This is an interactive live session. So if you're able to drop a note, please do. We encourage you to participate. To ask a question, just drop it in the chat and I'll bring it to the conversation and ask whenever we can. We'll use LinkedIn DMs and the comment section in the events posting for any behind the scenes coordination. So look, feel free to drop us a message and we'll try to figure out your question and your issue. If you get disconnected, which LinkedIn will do this from time to time, just rejoin. And we know that there's a lot of you guys that are out there listening while you're commuting or you're at work. So engage however you can, even if you're a quiet listener or they're important parts of our community. By the way, I'm now on Spotify, so you can find me on Spotify. I'll drop this episode right after this, so get on Spotify. If it's working, I don't even know if it's working from all the internet stuff we had today. So look, thanks again for being here. Now let's get started. My guest today is a gentleman that I've known for a few years as part of the Cup of Joey group. He's deeply engaged in his community, which I really admire. He's a chamber chairman. He serves on many other boards, great storyteller in his public speaking, and so much more. He is a 29-year veteran of the maritime industry, which I'm interested to dig into with him in this conversation, where he's led multiple teams in the shipping agencies, both big and small. Oh, and let's keep going. He's a director of sales for Moran Shipping, co-founder of Fuel Trust, a software startup company, and the chairman emeritus, I hope I said that right, of the Lone Star Harbor Safety Committee, which represents about 800 plus stockholders. Only 800 plus on Houston area shipping channels. He sits on 4 other maritime boards. He's an active role in the Greater Houston Port Bureau, Association of Ships and Brokers and Agents, and Chamber of Shipping Americas. And that's just, I think that's the end. I think we're done. His family he lives in Alvin, Texas, where he also serves on the board of regents for Alvin College and has an EMBA from University of East London. Please welcome my friend and today's guest, Darren Shelton, as we find out what makes him tick. Darren, look, it's awesome to have you on. Give the listeners a little insight of what makes Darren tick.
Well, man, after that introduction, I don't know. I'm wore out thinking about everything you said I do. I guess the easiest way to answer what makes me tick is finding ways to add value in others' lives. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but at this stage in my life, which is that spot where you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up and what do you really want to do with your life, I think I want to add value. I want to help people, accomplish their goals, which again sounds very broad, but there really is a desire there to see people advance, be what they otherwise might not be without some direction and encouragement. And, try and do that in different ways. Some of them are professional, others volunteer ministry, but they all kind of dovetail around add value.
No, and I love it because, this show was centered and it starts out because of my purpose, trust, clarity, and traction. And in everything you just said, there has to be a huge amount of trust in everything that you do around you, especially the value.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, yes. Big, fat honking. Yes. Trust is the lifeblood of our relationships. People do business, they do life with people that they trust. And so if there is no trust, there can't be any traction. There can be a lot of friction, but there can't be any traction.
Yeah, and clarity. Yeah, it kind of gets muddy when you don't trust people.
Yeah. Well, and in shipping, trust isn't built by what's said in any boardroom. It's built at 2 a.m. when you're on the phone putting out some sort of a problem, or you're on the dock and you show up continuously, consistently. And that's true in faith and leadership too. People trust you when they can predict your character under pressure. And that's only formed by having had some level of experience with you.
Right.
So you have to get out there. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to take risk, and you have to be consistent. That's where people are able to get to know you. And by extension, then say, okay, I think this individual is somebody that, I can do life, do business, etc. with.
Right. Yeah. And, one of my things is, and I'm sure you've seen this, and then I want to ask you a question. One of my things is with trust. I think we misuse trust and we look at it differently. Now, granted, this is my opinion. It's not fact. But I think whenever you trust people and you give them trust, you actually find out who that person is, instead of making them earn it. Because I feel like sometimes we as a society, especially in business and really in relationships, we feel like we have to make people earn it, which I think we're only protecting ourselves. When as if you give the trust and people do what they do with it, you see who they truly are. Do you see the same thing?
Well, yeah, I do. And I would say it just a little bit differently though. I think I'm going to say it this way. I choose to give a certain amount of trust.
Yes.
Not knowing how well someone will treat it. It is their opportunity to then earn more trust. So I don't want to just go into relationships not trusting people because I don't know them. That's not a productive way. But I can't trust someone that I've only just met as much as someone that I may have worked with for 25 years. So I will give you a little. You can earn more. And I believe, because I think that's a good way to treat that currency, I'm fine with other people treating me that way. I don't expect you, if you don't know me, to just, give you everything. Big thing.
Yeah.
Now, there is an area, though, that I would add that I think comes into this, and that is, borrowed trust or borrowed credibility.
Yeah.
Where, if Bryan says, hey, Darren, this is Fred. He's a great guy. I've worked with him a long time, et cetera. So, okay, Fred, you get a little more trust than the guy that I don't know and don't know anybody who does, because Bryan's vouching for you. I am lending you additional trust basis his credibility.
You're right.
And I think that's where, when you start networking and you do a lot of things, people tend to give you a little more trust because of the relationships that you have. And that's fair. And if you've earned that, I think that is appropriate.
No, great. No, great point. And I love that. Like, before we go too much further, though, I have to ask, and I told you I was going to ask you this. I want to know your story. How did you get into the shipping business?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's not some glamorous story, I can assure you. Look, I grew up in Deep East Texas. I came to Houston to go to Bible college, and got down here like all good 20-year-olds. I was in credit card debt up to my eyeballs, which at the time, was a massive, probably $4,000. And I was like, but it felt overwhelming. So I was working all these jobs, and I had some friends who were in this shipping business, and I knew nothing about it. Right. Except to me, it looked like they were making more money than me. And in my mind, I tell the story this way, like they were idiots making good money. And I'm like, well, I can out idiot you and make better money. And so I got in shipping. You're going to laugh when you hear this. I started on Christmas Eve. My first day was Christmas Eve. Yeah.
Really?
A buddy of mine, I'd been trying to get in for a little while. He calls me on just like December 23rd. And he goes, hey, do you still want to come to work for us? I'm like, yeah. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking he's going to say beginning of the year or something. He's like, all right, you start tomorrow. And I'm like, nobody starts a job on Christmas Eve. He's like, well, you do if you want it. And I mean, I had to call into my other job on Christmas Eve. They were not fans. And say, hey, guys, I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I'm starting a new job. Anyway, that's how I got in it. I've been at 3 different shipping agencies over my 29 years, and the current shipping agency I've been at 25 years.
Wow.
So, and I will go just rewind to say this. Most people don't know much about shipping to begin with. And then the role that I play within the industry is extremely niche. So I've got people who've been in the business for 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what it is that we shipping agents do. So, but anyway, that's how I got in the business.
So what do you do? What does a shipping agent do?
Yeah, that's fair. So this is the way I explain it. Every time a ship, big ships, we're talking like product tankers, container ships, anytime one of those comes in a ship channel, they have an agent, and that agent is the middleman of all the middlemen for everybody having anything to do with that ship. So the owner, the person that's got a cargo, U.S. Coast Guard, customs, the guy that's delivering groceries, the one that's bringing fuel, the guy on the dock. The agent is the middleman whose job is to get the ship in, get it out, and get everything done that was supposed to get done. And the agent has to know everybody else's job, because if they didn't do their job, then he didn't do his job. So it is quite literally a 25/8, 366. Ships don't stop.
Correct.
And so you get used to working crazy long hours, dealing with sometimes very high pressure. Solve this problem. People will call us and go, hey, we see this ship channel is closed due to fog. When is the fog going to lift? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Let me check. Let me call God. Can you? And so I've dealt with people dying on ships. I've dealt with oil spills and collisions and you name it. And it's just part of it. It's an exciting business. It's critical to our global commerce. 90% of the world's goods move by sea. And so, the agent, and this is global. It's not just like this is something in Houston or the United States. And every port around the world, there's a shipping agent facilitating ships getting in and out.
God, that's I didn't even realize that existed. I guess now that the way you put it, it's like, okay, that makes sense. You have to have somebody. So you're not the guy that gets down there and the ship pulls up and goes, hey, and they throw you the rope and you're like, oh, trying to.
No, that would be what we call the line handler, the guys that are mooring the ship. So we actually call those guys and say, hey, the ship's going to be taking a pilot at 6 a.m. It'll be at the dock at noon. And then those guys will tie it up and of course, later drop the lines and let the ship leave. And then they send me a bill and we pay the bill. So that's the other thing we do. We're a fiduciary for the port call. So, let's just say a ship comes in and the cost of that ship coming in and out is $100,000. Well, the agent is the one who pays the bills on behalf of the owners or the responsible parties. So there's a lot of accounting and fiduciary operations, negotiations that the agent gets involved in.
No, and the funny thing is, I'm looking at some of the stuff. You must have met just people from all over the place. And much like me, I'm in education. And you see people that are, that have different beliefs and different values, and you meet from all. I had a conversation today about this thing I didn't even know. It was one of my buddies went to this thing called the King's Rally, and he said they have never. And he went up and they didn't have anything on the Trump stuff or anything like that. He said they were real nice, and then they put their Trump cat up, and they stayed there for an hour. I just wanted to see what it was about. He said they had never been so beaten down and spit on. And I'm like, what do we do? So when you're talking, I'm thinking, not that, but I'm thinking you get a lot of people. How does that, like when you get people from all over the world and you come in contact with them, how does that impact the trust that you must build within somebody?
Yeah, that's fair. So it's true. I have to laugh when I tell this, but it's not untrue. I've been cussed out on every language in the high seas. And, I may
Did you
not
know
know
it?
Well, I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew what they meant. And, it's a great question. And, in shipping, I've worked with everybody from every background imaginable, whether they were, Muslim, Hindu, atheist, agnostic, Christian. And, what you learn from that is that trust is not built through theology. It's built through reliability. Yes. And so one key part to trust that I don't think gets talked about enough, and maybe it's a little awkward in certain contexts, is confidence.
Yeah.
When you go into, so if I'm boarding a ship at 2:00 in the morning and meeting a captain that I've never seen before, he's expecting me to have my act together. I'm the guy that's there to help him with customs and Coast Guard and whatever else comes up. I need to be confident. And if I walk in confident, like, Captain, I've done this 1,000 times. I got you. No problem. This is going to be fine. Well, that immediately allows for a certain amount of trust, because he doesn't have much of a choice. He needs to trust me. And the fact that I'm confident in what I am doing and I'm competent, I'm capable, that earns me more trust. So if something starts to go sideways, I can say, Captain, I got this. You be you, let me be me. This is fine. I ain't worried. You don't worry. And they need that. They like that. They respect that. And so, people are people. They may come from different beliefs. They may have different ideological backgrounds on the way they do things. But at the end of the day, they want to trust. I believe that most people want to trust. Now, there's a few exceptions to that, dysfunctional exceptions. But for the most part, people want to trust. And so I think when you have the right attitude, it really does speak volumes.
Yeah, no, and Heather chimed in. She sent us a message. What is this conversation about? The conversation is where Darren and I are just having a conversation about his life and our life, and how business and our personal lives have been affected through trust, clarity, and traction. We involve some purpose. And, one of the questions that we were just discussing was how the impact of trust with someone of a different value or a different belief can impact our lives. Before we go to our first break, though, Darren, look, I'm gonna let you go first. I always, at this venture, I always mention a book that's made an impact in my life. For me, I started reading. I don't read very well. I'm from Louisiana. I don't read very well, and so, but I've started listening to books. Probably 8 years ago, and I do it. I pick a book a month, and I use it to make a big impact. Sometimes I'll read another one on the side, but I listen to it. I take notes, and it's made a huge impact in my life. I'll talk about one here in a minute, but go ahead. You go first.
Well, so this is a bad one, a tough one for me, because I'm a bibliomaniac. I don't even know how many books I have, hundreds of books.
Wow.
So I could talk about books for a long time. I mean, I am a pastor, so of course I could talk about the Bible, but I think a book that's, a lot of people have heard about it, but The 7 Habits of Effective People by Stephen Covey. One of the things that I like about that book is his emphasis on begin with the end in mind. And that particular perspective has, to some degree, shaped how I've approached leadership decisions. Because whether you are coordinating vessel operations toward a certain outcome, or you are working with developing people, begin with the end in mind. And then, if I am going to tip my hat toward the faith side, God never starts a thing that he has not already finished. Yeah. So he is the author and the finisher, the Alpha and the Omega. And so I think we have to learn how to trust the process. Sometimes we are architects of process, which means we need to architect them with the end in mind, so that people can see, okay, this is the direction we're going in. This is the outcome we're working toward. We're aligned in that. And then it's easier for people to trust the process with that. So 7 Habits of Effective People, great book.
Love that. No, and I love what you just said, because I look back, when you get to our age and you start looking back as a leader, as a coach, as a father, a lot of the mistakes that I've made that have come out that didn't end well were because I didn't have the end in mind. And if I, looking at that, I would have made different decisions at some different points that may have led me down a different route. But at the same time, I've learned a lot of lessons and have been privileged in many things that I wouldn't, even in the losses that I've had in my life. The book I'm going to pick today is called The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher. And he's a trial lawyer who's social media fame. And I saw him. I loved his quotes because they were simple. So I was like, okay, let me check out his book. And in this book, he offers real techniques to really improve your speech and how you choose your words and how you stick them, how you clarify and inspire in what you do. So one of the big takeaways I had from this was, look, if you want to get your thoughts or your feelings across, just say it. And sometimes you just need to make sure that it comes across as a clear message in what you're doing. A couple of takeaways, and I'll have Tuesdays. I always have an article coming out about a book that I read, and this one, of course, will be the one we talked about. But it really focused on the 3 C's, which were, as you mentioned earlier, confidence, control, and connection, and how important they were in what we say and how we say it. So you say something with confidence, number 1. Number 2, you hold it with control, and then you aim to connect. And if you look at those and focus on those 3 threes, your words will matter in everything that you do. And there's a ripple effect that affects generations that we never know. As an educator and as a father, I've had conversations with my own kids and other, one of my guests on here a while back, Charlie Warren, was one of my former players. Some of the stuff that we've had, they go, yeah, coach, or yeah, dad, I remember you saying this and this affected my life. I had no idea at the moment, and their reaction never told me at the moment what was going on. But later on in their actions, I started to see, or they said that made a big, you just never know on how big of an impact it makes. So that was a really good listen. I enjoyed that book. Look, today, as I said earlier, today's my 20th podcast, which, what makes you tick? It's an authentic, relaxed, purposeful conversation about trust, clarity, and traction. Why? We want to help incorporate purpose into what you do and the impact of your life and others. Sharing business and personal stories on culture is how we do this. And we create a culture of trust, creating clear, impactful message for leaders with insight on how you can build traction within your life. My guest today is Darren Shelton of Maritime fame. And look, Darren, there's one thing I always start the second segment off with, and I really like it. And I'd love anybody that's out there listening. If I have a lot of listeners that don't listen live. If we have anybody out there that you want to engage, I'd love this. And it's a challenge. We always face challenges that we don't have an answer to yet, but we have to trust. And I'm a man of faith. You're a man of faith. Our trust is at a different level than some people may or may not understand. But how is trust and clarity so important in something that you're facing that you just don't have an answer to?
Yeah. Well, we talked about trust a little bit. To me, clarity does not mean you know everything. Obviously, nobody knows everything.
Correct.
But clarity is about being clear on what you do know and what you stand for. And so in business, clarity removes friction. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people are talking past each other. It's potato. They're really talking about the same thing. They're just using different words. Well, when you have clarity, that solves that problem. Now, in faith, clarity removes fear. Yeah. And in both of those situations, clarity leads to peace. And I'm big on peace. I have zero interest in drama. Not that I can't deal with it. I'm just going to deal with it. And, we're not going to put up with it. Or I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm not going to sit around for that. So if you've got trust and you've got clarity, then you can begin to get traction. And traction is when trust and clarity stop being some mythical utopian ideal, and they actually become habits. And that's when you can turn motion into momentum, because you've got trust, you've got clarity, you've got traction. So, for when you're facing challenges and situations that you may not have the answer for,
right?
My advice would be go into it assuming that you can trust the people that are involved, the situation. You may not have control over it, but you can have confidence in you in it. And then go in trusting, knowing that people have got to earn the additional trust, have clarity, and expect to see traction. And if you're not getting traction at some point, well, then there's a problem between the trust and the clarity. Either you're not doing your part, they're not doing their part. For whatever reason, there's not alignment and you're not moving forward. So some people are wired differently. That's just a reality. Of course, I face challenges all the time, but I usually face them with a confidence that, we're going to get through this. We'll
Right.
figure it out. It may take a minute. We may have to make a phone call. We may have to have a prayer meeting. We will figure this out. It will be fine. This is not the end of the world.
No, it's funny because look, we were off for a week as educators. So I was out the Friday before we were off for with my softball girls. We had an event would help the elementary school out. They had a field day, so we go and work it, and I had to trust somebody else in my class. I left everything online for my kids to do. I left them the papers. They had simple instructions. It was to do. I had to trust this person. I didn't know this person. I met him when he walked into my class because I happened to be there getting ready to leave the day before. I had to trust him, and I had no idea what my kids were going to turn out. Today, I showed up after looking at all their grades because it was also the end of the first quarter, and I was already frustrated in my own actions and what I did, and I realized that there were things that I have done that have let them down. So I have to be able to come in and trust somebody else. There were things today, Darren, in my class that they were supposed to learn. They didn't do the stuff on their own. It wasn't necessarily about my sub. My sub should have done a better job. But I trusted my kids to do what they were supposed to do, and they didn't. In the long run, it created frustration for me because there's certain things, and I'm limited on time, that we have to cover. But where I'm really frustrated with them is I don't think that they understand. You were talking about the outcome. I don't think they understand their actions by either not being there, but they're doing nothing, how that's going to affect them down the line, which will be at our next test or our next quiz or whatever that's going to be. Those are things that it's really important for our kids. And then, same thing for me, it's like you have to be persistent because there's goals that we have to set. The kids nowadays struggle. They've got some really good advantages, but I'm not sure that they understand goals, and I'm not sure that they understand obstacles. Like today, as part of that, we should have learned what we did. So the assignment today, we had to go backwards to relearn it. And I had kids that were constantly telling, I don't get this. I don't understand. Like immediately, they're faced with an obstacle, and everything is on the paper in front of them or on the screen behind me, or I've gone over it. And because they have that obstacle, they struggle to see how to get through it. They can't tap on their phone and get an answer quick like that. So they struggle. And it has to be a certain type of mindset. Now, this is my business, and I teach it my kids the same way. And it's funny because my son, you've got a son. So my son the other day was talking to me, and he was saying, yeah, Dad, I learned that I'm this way because of you. I went, in a good way. I went, holy cow. You just never hear, and it's part of the mindset and some of the changes that we're giving because the way you think, the way you are persistent in to achieve a goal, it has to be that way. So what do you think about the persistence and the mindset of achieving a goal?
Well, goals are moving targets. And, persistence is necessary, but so is adaptability. Some people are very rigid in the way they approach certain things, and that can be really great or not. And it's a to be determined. Your podcast with Dolores Townley, which great podcast. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
Y'all said something there, and it really struck me. Not all things are teachable. But all things are learnable. By which I mean, there are some truths that defy instruction. So you can't teach heartbreak. You can't teach resilience. You really can't teach humility because they are too deeply tied to our personal encounters. But all things are learnable. So given enough openness, given time, a person can learn anything. And so life itself becomes a teacher when humans posture themselves as learners. And you're a teacher, obviously. I'm a teacher. Yes. The best teachers don't claim to teach everything. They create conditions where learning can occur. And so when people are trying to set goals and achieve goals, and that's great. The odds are for most people, you may not achieve that goal on the first round. But learn, pay attention, take notes, because you can probably pass it the second time around with
Yeah.
flying colors.
Yeah.
And certainly if you are observing others, maybe you can even learn from some of their mistakes. I mean, look, I'm a father, you're a father. I imagine your youngest child has learned some lessons from the older kids and what to do, what not to do. They had a chance to observe it. Now your oldest child, they didn't have anybody to look up to and go, oh, that was dumb. That got me in trouble. So if you're paying attention, you can learn a lot in life. And I think you can achieve a lot from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I'm sitting here listening to what you're talking about. And there were several instances today of just the obstacles that you have if you don't have any goals on how you get past them. And you and I both have been part of Cup of Joey. And I think I'll get on my education idea here for a second. And I think this is, we'll use it as an education example, but I think it's one of those things that you can find throughout your life. I don't think because I think our family unit is not the same as it was 20, 25 years ago. I think it's really disruptive. I think our school systems are not the same because of that and outside of that. And I think a lot of things have been put on teachers. The one thing I think that we're all missing, and you and I, because of Cup of Joey and the stuff that we've done, understand this. We don't teach purpose. Nobody teaches understand how do you understand purpose? Because if you understand your purpose, you then have at least a better control over your mindset. In other words, somebody can't come in and influence it because you're an open book. Even though, let me backtrack. You need to be open in what you receive, but what you absorb is not. You have the purpose in front of you as a shield. And I think that's one of the things that we're missing in our education system right now, along with a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you. I mean, I think you touched on something there. I mean, families have evolved, technology has evolved. There's just been this evolution of the ecosystem in which learning occurs. I'm profoundly reminded of, dysfunctional families. They don't talk, they don't touch, they don't trust.
Right.
And we see an increasing amount of dysfunction in our society.
Yep.
Partly related to how distracted people are. And that's a technological thing. I mean, when you and I grew up, we had TVs, VCRs, and cassette tapes.
Yeah.
When I was teaching my kids how to drive, I'm like, look, when I was your age, the only thing I had to distract me was a cassette tape and a pretty girl. That was it.
Yeah.
I didn't have phones. I didn't have apps. I didn't have Google Maps telling me how to drive or Siri. None of that. And so we're just in a different day where we have to adapt if we want to keep the nuclear family values intact. And I really do appreciate the comments you made. I feel like a lot of things have been shifted over toward teachers. People just think that dropping my kid off and I expect to come back and find, this amazing young adult. And that just doesn't work that way. So we have to figure out a way to change that mentality, to reframe those expectations if we expect our society to continue to mature in useful ways.
No, and the funny thing is, within what they're doing, there's a lot of failures that happen. And I don't know that our young kids understand how to deal with failure. There's a lot of families out there. There's a lot of people out there that don't know how to. Failure can create some of the biggest changes and positive opportunities in your life. I mean, look, I went through a divorce. I was a teacher, and I was I taught from another 2.5 years after I was divorced. But because of my divorce, I ended up deciding to lose weight. I wanted to read. I decided I wanted to go into sales. I wanted to experience something different. Gordon Foods gave me a fantastic opportunity. Great company. I love that company and would promote them all day. They gave me the opportunity. All of that came from something that went bad, but I got feedback from what I went bad. And I decided to change my mindset. And instead of letting it beat myself up, which granted, there are things that are going on in my life right now, I do beat up myself, but at the same time, that positive change because of the negative situation I went through, it still carries over because I know, and again, going back to a man of faith, I also know that there's right now, and I'll be point blank right now, the situation I'm in and what I've been in for the last year and a half on the personal and business side has been a big challenge for me. And I'm kind of floating in that area. My kids are gone. So there's a lot of change happening and a lot of negative things that are happening that I have no control over.
Yeah.
And the one thing that gets me going is it's my change in my mindset, and
Yep.
it'll create positive opportunities. But it's me. I know that, and I believe that God has me in this spot because there's
Sure.
something I'm supposed to learn that
Yeah.
he's teaching me. And if I don't, I miss that opportunity.
Yeah. We're human. We make mistakes. And the most debilitating human condition is shame. We do things, we become ashamed of ourselves, and then there can become this cycle of shame, cyclical shame, that just has a compounding effect. At some point, we have to break free from that. If it was easy, everybody would do it, and it's not.
Right.
I understand that. I don't want to say it in such a way that it's, misunderstood. But by the same token, I think, for me, the biggest shift came when I stopped trying to prove myself. That's shame causes you to feel like you have to prove yourself. So when I stopped trying to prove myself and start instead just trying to be useful, trying to add value.
Right.
And, once I understood that credibility follows consistency, not charisma, everything changed. Business, ministry, relationships, just, being there, being somebody who was trustworthy. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm not perfect.
Right.
But I'm a big boy. If I make a mistake, I'll apologize. I'll try and do better next time. And that is a vulnerability. People can see it and go, okay, I recognize you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. So I think that when we change the way we think, back to mindset, when we change the way we think about certain deals and the way we approach them, and I guess this is easy for two guys. We're about the same age. This is easy. I'm just going to pick on us. This is easy for old men to say. And I recognize that. I'll tell you a quick personal story.
Yeah, go. Yeah, please.
When I was 12, my maternal grandfather passed away. He was a minister, small churches, East Texas. And at his funeral, one of the men that was speaking was a very well-respected older minister, a little younger, but about the same age as my grandfather. They were both men of great character and wisdom. I was 12, and I'm sitting there listening to this preacher, and he made a statement, and he said of his relationship with my grandfather, he said, we talked about things that only mature men talk about. I was 12. Mm-hmm. These guys are 70. What is it that is so exclusive that only mature men can talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, my curiosity was piqued at that age, and it was like this haunting, challenging question. What is it that only mature men can talk about? So fast forward about 8 years later, I was with a gentleman that's a few years older than me, but he had known the man that made that statement pretty well. And I asked him, I said, what do you think that he meant by that? And of course, I had to repeat it to him because he didn't remember it as vividly as I did. But when I did, he was like, Darren, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. And that conversation was 30 years ago. So now the much older version of me, I don't know if I completely know what the 70-year-old idea of a mature conversation looks like. But the 50-year-old version of me knows it a lot better than the 20 and the 12-year-old version did. Yeah. So life and experience and maturity changes a lot. You get older and you just realize some things don't matter. They just like, oh, that's silly. I can't believe I ever thought that mattered.
It creates clarity.
It does. It absolutely does. Yes. And I encourage people all the time. I say, pray for wisdom, knowledge, favor, and divine understanding. Because if you have those things, I think clarity can come faster if you're open to it. Yeah. You've heard this before, and it's good advice for young people to find old people and sit and just talk to them. Just listen. Yeah. You don't even have to really have an agenda. Just let them talk. because a lot of times you can pick up on a few things and be like, oh, I never thought about thinking about that. That's okay. Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that. Look, I know we're about 10 minutes behind my second reset, but we'll do it anyway because that's normally the way this show goes. Look, thank you for listening to my podcast, What Makes You Tick, with Darren and I are having an authentic, purposeful conversation over trust, clarity, and traction. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them into the chat. We'd love to add. We've already had one. We've addressed it. Would love to hear some more from you guys. Darren, do you have any takeaways so far? Anything you want to say before we move on to the last segment?
Oh man, I mean, that's don't give a preacher a microphone and ask him if he's got something that he wants to say. I will tell you, I mentioned this earlier. I started the maritime industry on Christmas Eve, which is still silly. I laugh when I talk about it. And I've worked, through storms. I've dealt with all kind of problems and issues. And one thing that you learn from that is that life, and in my case, the shipping industry, doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Take what you've got, do the best you can with it. It'll be okay. It really will be okay. Don't wait for perfect to come around. Just get in there and do it. See what happens. Make a mistake. Learn from your mistake. Repeat. Before long, there's a good chance you'll be pretty successful.
No, I love that. And that's great. Look, I don't normally do this, but there was one thing that I did want to put on here. One of the things that I do pre-show is I always try to know my guests. One, so we either have a conversation if I don't know them well, or I've just known them. Two, I prep with them. They send me some information. I send it back out because I want to have something that we can engage with. And one of the things that I do is always send out questions or topics that we can discuss. And there was one that you had put back on that I wanted to hear you talk about. And it was pressure situations where trust, it was important in accomplishing a goal. Can
Say that again.
Can you think of any pressure situations where the trust piece was huge in accomplishing a goal?
Well, yes, I can probably think of too many, because in our industry, we run into problems. I mean, like I said earlier, I've had oil spills. I've had ships have collisions and take on water, and they're about to sink, and they have to be salvage operations come in. Things that can shut down the entire Houston ship channel, that because of my involvement, in conversations like, okay, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to solve this? Who do we need to get involved? Collaboration requires trust and clarity if you're going to have any traction. So when you're talking about these challenges,
well said.
You've got to go into it with a mentality of, I don't know all the people sitting at this table. I assume they got in this room and to this table because somebody knows them.
Yeah.
And if they're not a good fit, we'll figure it out soon enough, and we will do what needs to be done in order to move forward. You cannot predict the unpredictable elements of life except to know that they will come. I mean, I use this quote, love this quote, Rumsfeld, we have our known knowns, our known unknowns, and we have our unknown unknowns. And there's going to just be some things you don't know, but they're coming. They're going to happen. And that shouldn't intimidate you. Doesn't have to. It can instead just say, okay, how bad can it be? Well, it may be bad, but I don't know. You can survive it. I'm still here. So that was a really long and probably vague answer to your question. I'm sorry.
No. While you're talking, I'm thinking in the maritime, you have these giant ships that are going through a ship channel, and they go both ways, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you had anything where there was a situation that was about to happen and you could see it happening, or you were surrounded, your people could see it was happening, and you had to really trust the people? Like, you couldn't control it. There's nothing to do. So you had to trust the people that were around you to get out of the situation before the situation happened. Like two ships are headed for each other. That kind of stuff.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
I encourage people who are curious to go online and Google this phrase, Texas chicken. And so I don't know what that might pull up, other than, if you have to add the word ship to it, but the Houston pilots have infamously created this movement where they literally take two ships that are headed toward each other, and then by design, they begin to cant until they start to pass, and then they reverse it so that they can have two-way traffic. And they're using fluid dynamics and, all of the centrifugal force or whatever the appropriate navigational terms is. I'm not a captain.
Yeah.
But it works. And, they do that in order to facilitate two big ships coming straight toward each other.
Wow.
And so to answer your question, we on the regular have things that happen where we have to trust the people that are involved. I mean, I've seen ships that would have collided if it wasn't for a tugboat captain that saw it coming and got out there and knew exactly what he was doing. And in an instant saved, millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars because they saw something coming and they acted quickly.
Yeah.
My role in some of those is sometimes early into the process.
Uh-huh.
It might be after. I may not be directly involved. I may just be like, oh, did you hear? And I'm like, oh, well, glad that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah. It's funny because, look, I grew up in Baton Rouge, and so we would drive over the Mississippi River all the time. And you would see ships go under. You'd see a lot more times or not, you'd see ships dock. But I never thought, how would that process go? I just thought as a kid, go, oh, cool ship. You'd look down and go, oh, hey, steam, I see daddy. I see steam. That those were kind of the things that we saw. And then as you got older, you'd drive over and go, oh, there's the Mississippi River. Oh, it's muddy. What the heck? And there's so much of that stuff that goes on in the background that we just don't know. And I think there's kids out there that don't know and would want to be that, much like you.
Well, since you said that, I'm going to tell you something. And I'm we don't have time to unpack this here today. There are amazing jobs in the shipping industry, whether it's on big ships that go out to sea, what we call blue water, or on the tugs and barges that run up and down the Mississippi, what we call brown water. Mm-hmm. These are entry-level jobs that can pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. That some of them require different types of education, but it's an amazing field and industry. Most people who get in it never get out of it. I tried to escape a couple times and it sucked me right back in. It's just an amazing ecosystem to be involved in. And so for any of our young adults that might be out there, and not that you have an age limit, but I would encourage you to look at jobs in the maritime industry. You might be surprised at the opportunities that are out there, the income that can be earned, and just a great industry to be a part of. I see people in it all the time, and they love what they're doing. Wouldn't change it for anything. So, but most people don't know. I didn't know. I grew up in Woden, Texas, deep piney woods, East Texas. I like you. I would cross the 610 bridge in Houston, and I would see all the cars that were parked there at the port. Yeah. Didn't have any idea what that was all about. Didn't understand how they got there. It was just this fleeting glance, like, oh, there's a world I know nothing about. And then down the freeway. And yet, as I said earlier, 90% of the world's goods move by sea. Right now, there's a couple things going on globally around decarbonization. People have heard about tariffs with China.
Correct.
These are really big things that affect our global economy. And I'll just pick on one piece of it. One of those tariffs has to do with cars that come into the United States on vehicle carriers, what we call RoRos. And one of those tariffs adds several $100s per car. Now, you're thinking, man, well, cars are $30,000, $40,000 a year. What's $300? Well, fair enough. I mean, but it's still a number. Imagine when the cost of your TV goes up, when the cost of everything. I mean, most of this stuff comes in a box, right?
Right.
And so this is real world economics at a very fundamental level.
It's crazy how all that works, and especially with everything that's going on. Look, we're getting close to the end. So the last two things I want to talk about are, look, giving a dream. Just real quick, if you had advice that you would give somebody, anybody, I mean, look, my dream is changing. What advice would you tell somebody about chasing their dream and making it reality?
Well, fair, good. I would say dreams are great. Have a dream, but don't chase opportunities. There's too many of them out there. Build consistency. Dreams are achieved by people who do boring things very faithfully. And if you do that consistently, reliably, that's how you turn trust into traction and begin to actually move forward on accomplishing your dream. So that'd be my advice.
Now, and one of the things that I recently learned, and kind of mine always forms differently, or I guess it grows over the years. I think one, when you have an idea or something that you want to achieve, a dream that you see, one, to pray about it. Two, take a minute before you make a decision. And number three, which this is honestly, I've had one of the biggest parts of my life. Don't be afraid to say no. It's okay to say no, because that may not be your dream, maybe part of it or a segment or something that has false dreams, but don't be afraid to say no.
No. Yeah. The older you get, the better you get at no.
Oh gosh, I wish. I'm still sucking at it. But and you were talking about this will be kind of the end, because we're getting close to the end here, but one of the things, me working with young kids, I always want to talk with young kids and really give them some type of advice towards how important trust or clarity or traction, all that is. Yeah. You said something earlier, like people don't know a lot about the shipping business and the jobs that are there and the great jobs. That's the thing. You go back to purpose. I think that's the other piece we're missing, is when they get to high school, creating this. We have so many electronic opportunities. Why can't we create a simple mentorship, even if it's for a day, to see, one, how does your purpose that I've just now taught you connect to the industry that you're looking at? And two, what does a day in a life look like in what Darren does? And that might, like my son, he wants to be an aircraft mechanic. So I have a guy, he had a conversation yesterday about it. Now he's looking for somebody else to have a different conversation with about being an airplane mechanic, because that's his dream. Those are things I think we miss.
No, I would agree. And first of all, I would tell your son he should consider being a tugboat mechanic. He can be an engineer in that field.
Interesting.
I'm just thinking I'm all for him being I fly on planes, so I like having good airplane mechanics as well. When we talk about the younger generation, I've got kids, you've got kids, and we don't know what we don't know, and they're all trying to figure it out. But here's some generic advice. I say generic, that I would relay to lots of people, young and old. If you can't be trusted, your clarity will not matter. So when you're trying to figure out your purpose, realize that the most important thing first is you've got to be trusted. If you're not clear, your trust isn't going to last, because people are not going to be able to communicate with you. And so for most people, and I think this really affects young people who are trying to figure themselves out, start by being real with yourself, because people follow honesty more than they do hype. And so you may not know you perfectly, no problem. Yeah. But be honest with who you are. Don't let yourself get caught up in the chaos and confusion and the pressure of trying to perform.
Yes.
It's okay to be like, hey, I don't know. I don't know. And like you said, I'm going to pray and figure it out. And then just very carefully move forward, learn to listen, ask questions, find people you can trust. Man, find people you can trust and ask
That's
them,
huge.
hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. What do you think? Because what I had to learn, and you may have to learn the hard way, in my young mind, it was A, B, or C. That was it. Those were the only options.
Yeah.
When turns out there was a Q, K, L, N, O, P that I'd never heard of. And
those confused me. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know. And, so anyway.
No, I know very well exactly what you're saying. So look, please, let's connect with Darren. You guys, if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube Live. Oh, I'm on LinkedIn and YouTube Live. Check us out on Spotify, because right after this is, as soon as we hop off, I'm going to download it on Spotify. You can catch all of my 20 episodes by the end of the night on Spotify. So please do. Darren, please share any way that the audience LinkedIn that they can find you.
LinkedIn's the easiest way. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm on other channels, but look, just start with LinkedIn. It's the easiest way, and I'd love to connect and get to know you better.
Good. Love it. Awesome. Darren, thank you for being my guest on What Makes You Tick.
Thank you.
Let's go out and make an impact in our lives and our communities through trust, clarity, and traction. Let's be transitional over transactional while you're in your day. It makes a huge impact. You can find me on LinkedIn to stay connected. Send me a request. I'd love to hear your request. For our future episodes, check us out on LinkedIn. I'll have an event posting here. There's also my YouTube channel, which you can find, and Spotify. Spotify is more or less going to be, at least at this point, for listening to previous episodes. Darren, dude, it's been amazing. Please find my friend and let's connect with him. Join me next week for a conversation with Carla Marie Williams, an amazing energy and top of the list woman that I've ever met. You have to be on this for her. Have a fantastic week. See ya.